Welcome to the Drum Shuffle, a podcast offering insights, perspectives, and conversations for drummers. I'm your host, Jamie Eads. Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Drum Shuffle. This is episode 25. Jamie Eads joining you as always. Hope everybody's having a great week out there. We have a fantastic episode for you today. We are going to be joined by West Coast punk drumming legend, DJ Bonebrake of the band X. You are not going to want to miss our conversation, so please stay tuned. Los Cabos drumsticks may be the best kept secret from drummers today. Los Cabos Drumsticks makes the finest tools to touch a drummer's hands in the business. The best news, almost every popular stick size is available in both white hickory and red hickory. If you don't know what red hickory is, it's made from the heartwood of the hickory tree, unlike regular white hickory, which is made from sapwood. Red hickory drumsticks will hold up to even the hardest hitting drummers. Their durability comes from the density of the wood, but they do not sacrifice the feel. Please visit LosCabosDrumsticks.com to learn more about their products. And don't forget to ask at your favorite retailer for Los Cabos drumsticks. Guys, we're going to be joined today by DJ Bonebrake of the legendary punk band X. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that X was quite possibly the most influential punk band from the West Coast of all time. They are actually out on the road right now this month. Make sure you grab a ticket to go see him. DJ is just a wonderful human being, and we had a great conversation talking about how he came up through the years playing with the Germs. It doesn't get much bigger than that, folks. DJ's just a great guy. So again, make sure you go check out X as they're on the road this summer. So please help me welcome DJ Bonebrake to the Drum Shuffle. Good afternoon, DJ. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jamie. How are you? It's great to be on your show.
Oh, well, thanks so much for taking the time to come on the Drum Shuffle. We certainly appreciate it. I got to send mad props right off the bat to my buddy Josh Touchton at Natal Drums for hooking the two of us up.
I appreciate it too. I love Josh. He's so good. I've known him for a number of years, and yeah, he's the best guy in the world.
He is a great guy, and I said, hey, I want to have DJ on, and he was like, let me make a call. So thanks for taking time, DJ. We certainly appreciate it. I think it's widely known that you grew up in Southern California. But tell us a little bit about how you came to the drums and started drumming.
Okay, I'll do my best. Before I tell you exactly when I started, and I'll give you the mythology. How's that?
Yeah, the mythology sometimes is better than the real thing, right?
Yeah, well, and I'm not sure if it's totally true. That's why it's a myth. But my parents took baby pictures of all of us, and there was a picture of me pulling all of the pots and pans from underneath where we keep them under the sink, and I'm just pulling them all out. And they used to call me the plumber. They thought it was funny. Oh, he's the plumber. And I realized later I wasn't a plumber. I was a drummer.
Yeah.
And so, I mention that also because I think certain people are drawn to it naturally. They start hitting things, and they just, I guess you're kind of born with it. Not that you have to start that way, but that's the mythology. But that I was born in 1955, and I had two brothers, and they both became musicians, and there was a lot of music in the house. My parents didn't play music, but it was at a time when there was a lot of there was music on AM radio. Those were iconic years. I remember hearing the Beach Boys and the Beatles and Motown stuff, and it was all on KRLA, KHJ, KFWB, and we listened constantly. And then I remember seeing the Beatles, and that influenced a lot of people, including me. It was like, wow, oh, wow, the drums. And so my brother was, oldest brother, Bill, was a guitar player, and he would have bands rehearse at the house. First, like a little guy with a hi-hat and a snare drum, and I would always sneak in and start playing it,
Yeah.
And it was the easiest instrument too to get. When they left, you didn't have to try to plug anything in. You just walk up to it and start hitting it. So I was influenced by that, that era, and then hearing my brother play in a band, and they would play all the, the Doors, and they would play, Jethro Tull and Hendrix, and I started somehow I got some sticks. I started playing on a frisbee, and then on a basketball, and so I'm almost there. This is the kind of question that can go on forever. I don't know if it's interesting, but when I started playing, actually taking lessons, my oldest brother became a Buddhist, an Nichiren Shoshu Nam-myoho Renge-kyo Buddhist at the time, 1967, and I wanted to do everything he did. So I started going to those meetings, and they said, "Oh, we have a band." So I went to the band. I said, "I don't play anything." They said, They said, "We don't care. We'll teach you." So I went to a band practice, and they said, "Oh, we need drummers and sax players." I said, "Okay, drums." And they sent me. They said, "Oh, here's your teacher. Here's this guy Bob Dixon. I'll show you." And he showed me what drummers always show you. Here's a single stroke roll, double stroke, and paradiddle, and buy some 2B sticks and a Remo practice pad, and kind of the rest was history. Started playing in the band, and then from there I started playing, in the junior high school bands and orchestras and community orchestras, and we had our own rock band. We played all the hits, and then so kind of just that's all I wanted to do by then. So there we are. We're at the very beginning.
I got you. Okay. So, well, I quite honestly, DJ, I think maybe, learning to play drums in a Buddhist temple might be cooler than your mythology. I don't know.
Well, it's pretty crazy. Well, the weird thing about, it was imagine 1967. That was all the, in 68, I was probably the end of 67. And there were a lot of hippies and jazz players, and they were all trying to go straight. Like some of the people in the organization were, it wasn't like a regular temple. It was like, or church. It was like individual. They had meetings at houses, and they would have a big meeting in Santa Monica. And they, they had a marching band, and they had this cultural thing with, music's important, and, and they had a big band, and I learned so much in that big band. I started out in the marching band. I really progressed because I was into it. And by the time I was about 15, they go, "Hey, you should play in what's called the Tribune band. Play in the jazz band." And there were a bunch of really interesting. It was a mixture of really great players and some players that were good, and some people. They got me to play drums, and I learned eventually. I was getting better, but. There were people in the band, like a guy from the Don Ellis Orchestra who would play with us sometimes, Pete Robinson, and, a sax player who was just like, in the city, he was like one of the hottest players, Alan Praskin. And there was a trumpet player, I think, he wasn't the greatest trumpet player, Dave Blumberg, but he was an arranger, and he did, for his job was arranging, Jackson 5, Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, and Diana Ross,
Yeah.
So I talked to Dave Blumberg, and he'd go, "Oh yeah, the guys are playing the hi-hat with two hands now. This is what the funk guys are doing. Like in the late '60s, or it might have been 1970. And I didn't know anything about that. And he's, and he's. And so these guys are blowing my mind, and there were more. There were just on the list, I could probably just. They're not really well known, so. One guy ended up playing with Glenn Campbell, Craig Fall. He was a guitar player. He was that good. Like you play in Glenn Campbell's band. You have to be pretty damn good.
Yeah.
And so I learned from these people. Like I was just thrown into the fire, and we'd do big shows backing up a bunch of singers and be reading charts. and we play the Shrine Auditorium, and play big places like the Pit Band, and and talk about being thrown into it, like you're playing 6-page charts, and you're going, fuck, I've only been playing 3 or 4 years.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like you were thrown in at a very early age, and we're playing with some pretty accomplished guys. So, it's, I guess at that point, it's either, swim or sink, right?
Yeah. And I swam sometimes, I sank a few times. I mentioned the piano player, Pete Robinson. He was so accomplished. I mean, I think he was in the Don Ellis band at 15 or 16, and he had a band called Contraband, and sometimes he wouldn't be in the band all the time, but he'd come in and one time he got really frustrated with me. He goes, I play with this drummer, you should take lessons from him. This guy, Brian Moffat. They had a band, it was called Contraband. And they were kind of a, Miles Davis electric type band in 1970 or 71, and they're really good, local guys. And Brian Moffat, I took lessons from him, and they used to call him Madman Moffat. And he came to my house, and I'm this dorky guy, I'm in maybe the first year of high school, and he goes, play me something, and then he goes, wait, you're so stiff. He goes, stand up. And I go, I stand up, and he goes, relax. Okay, drumming is dancing. He goes, dance. Just, okay, you're dancing when you play, And then he sat me down, and he goes, okay, now I want you to sing everything you play. And I remember one of the exercises was playing the first page of Stick Control, but, combining your feet and your hands, like playing your right hand and foot and your left hand and left foot, and playing something like, one of the paradiddles. And he would say, play it for 2 hours straight and make it groove. So you're going to, and then you play it on the toms, and he got me into, four-way coordination, that book, and different things, and he would give me songs like, play to this Miles Davis record, with Tony Williams playing, and learn that, and he was it wasn't a structured lesson at all. In fact, I remember I think I read music better than him. Like, he'd write something out, and I go, that's wrong, but he was so good, and it was a great influence, just like someone who would just like. And the other thing he said to me, I said, it's hard to practice a lot. And he goes, take a break every 2 hours and don't practice more than 10 hours a day. And, he was a jazz guy mostly, and it was like, oh, I see what I'm getting into. Fuck. I said that word. I mean, it was like I was totally, like, whoa, this guy is committed. That's what you do. That's why you're crazy.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm kind of going off, on that. But that was, he was a really good teacher for me. Like, he was maybe my third teacher, out of a dozen teachers over the years. So,
yeah, I mean, I can't imagine what it would be like for somebody to say, now don't practice more than 10 hours a day. That would blow my mind.
Yeah.
At a young age, anyway. It's just that's a lot. Well, so you're playing drums, early in your life. Who were some of your big influences? You've mentioned a lot of jazz guys. So, and I know that you play a lot of jazz nowadays.
Yeah, I play enough. I play some vibes, and I'm not a great jazz drummer. I have to say that. I usually, if you set me on a stage and wow, there's a jazz band, I wouldn't want to. I do that. I've done it a couple times, and I don't feel like I'm very good at it. But I can play restaurants, and I'll play with people. I'll play jazz, and play some bossa novas and play some funk. But I really like jazz. But I didn't get to. I started out as with rock, but my brother in the middle, Ken, I was the youngest. He was a trumpet player, and he played jazz all the time. So I started hearing Freddie Hubbard and John Coltrane, and I got that influence from him, and then and then Buddy Rich. I mean, that was okay. That was I'm not that he wasn't my first influence, but by the time when I was 15, it was like wow. this guy's great. I had a drummer friend, Lance Eklund, who turned me on to him and Tony Williams. It was like my mind was blown, okay. It probably started with, like a lot of people, Ringo Starr, because you knew who he was,
right?
And actually, I'm sure it started before that. Like everyone said, like Hal Blaine played on almost every record. I think it was Doug Seeger from the Knack. I think he's the one who quoted this. He said, "I just found out who my 6 favorite drummers are." Hal Blaine,
right?
So, they were all, at that time you didn't get a lot of information. You just heard stuff on the radio. And it was probably Hal Blaine, Jim Keltner, Gary Chester, Earl Palmer, Bernard Purdy, or someone like that. Or, if you heard the Stax stuff, Alan Jackson Jr. So all those guys, I didn't know they were influencing me, DJ Fontana. I heard the Elvis records at my neighbor's house because he had an older brother. I was into the Beatles. And so it's like, oh, that's interesting. Or like Mel Taylor. I had Ventures records. I listened to those. I remember we'd get a road race set, and we'd get a Ventures record,
Yeah.
And they always had those provocative covers with, a busty woman dancing. It's like, whoa, you're 10 years old, 8 years old, and wow, I like this album. But consciously, it was because the English scene at the time was so big. I knew the drummers Keith Moon and Ginger Baker and Mitch Mitchell. I love Mitch Mitchell, with Jimi Hendrix. I knew who Charlie Watts was, John Densmore from The Doors. And then there's so many influences. I'm just blowing my own mind. Someone played me Trout Mask Replica by Captain Beefheart.
Oh, yeah.
Probably 1971 or something like that. And one of the bass player in one of my brother's bands said, "Listen to this," and and they go, I don't know if you've ever heard that, but people, you hear it the first time, you go, "Whoa!" You're fascinated. You don't know if you like it or hate it. So, but I ended up really liking that band, and that was Drumbo was in the band. John French. I really was influenced by him. But then I started seeing them in 1972 live. Went to see them with, I think, Pure Food and Drug Act was opening for them with Sugarcane Harris, and Art Tripp was in the band at that time, Ed Marimba. He blew my mind. I mean, I loved him. He was like, he was classically trained. He could play jazz, and he could play the weird ass Captain Beefheart music.
Right.
And he for a long time he was the guy. That was someone I aspired to be, like, because I was playing some classical music. In fact, gosh, I remember at the time I went to that concert with the oboe player for this. I was in the Cal Arts Youth Orchestra. They had a Saturday, orchestra for students, and it was really good orchestra. And so, I was playing classical at the time, and Art Tripp the Third, and then, gosh, I mean, the list goes on, because you think, like, you go. I mean, we used to play Black Sabbath songs, but I didn't know who Bill Ward was until later,
Right.
And then all the jazz people, like that, I remember. Am I just talking too much? But I'm just I feel like I drank coffee.
No, this is great. I mean, the thing about us drummers is we do have such a long list of guys that we, cop a feel from, or I stole this lick from that guy. And it is just kind of a big soup that we all listen to, right? I mean,
yeah. And for me, the key to knowing if a drummer really influenced you is that you recognize it when you're playing it. You go, oh, I'm doing that Ginger Baker thing.
Right.
I'm doing that Keith Moon thing. Oh, I'm trying to do the Billy Cobham thing. Oh, I shouldn't try to do that Buddy Rich thing. No one can do that. But Ringo Starr, like I'll make my stick go back and forth in the hi-hat, at the wrong angle. Like, like I'm whipping eggs, and it'd be like, oh, there, so yeah, there's so many. I mean, I like it's usually the same old list, but yeah, you're right. We're all influenced by this, and it's and my mind has been blown so many times. When I used to see Buddy Rich live, I couldn't believe it, and when I saw Billy Cobham, I just I saw him with his band. I missed the Mahavishnu Orchestra. I tried to see them, but I couldn't get in. But that band blew my mind. But when I saw Billy Cobham, you know what my reaction was? I saw him at the Roxy here, and I left and I went, oh, okay. I'm going to have to start eating steaks and running 10 miles a day. I think I was a runner already, but it was like, and I guess I really am going to have to try to practice 10 hours a day, which I didn't do, but I just remember going, wow, with such power,
Yeah.
And it's funny. It's not always someone like that. It's like Tommy Ramone. When I saw the Ramones play, he had such a simple style compared to, like Billy Cobham, but he blew my mind too. It's like, wow, that is so precise, so simple, and it's perfect. You can't add anything to it. You can't take anything away from it. It's perfect, so yeah, and my only regret is not seeing certain drummers, like being lazy about it, or going, I'll see them when they come back, the next time. And I had that, finally. I mean, since I love jazz, I would go, I don't want to see him. But then luckily I got to see Art Blakey before he died. I saw Elvin Jones 3 or 4 times, later in life. I did see Louis Bellson a lot, early on. I'd seen his big band, play around, and but I never saw Shelly Manne. I never saw Joe Morello. I love him. I loved him. He's gone now. But yeah, it's just.
Well,
there's so many good ones.
For sure. I mean, your list is a who's who, right? I mean, it really is. You mentioned something in there that I want to bring up. You talked about the Ramones. Now, of course, anybody that knows anything about punk music will invariably cite the Ramones as a huge influence, right? But
yeah.
You were in this little band called X, still are.
Right.
You guys are still touring. And I can't, if I tried to name all of the, punk and post-punk bands that list X as an influence, we would run out of time. I mean, you guys were so influential in that music. I want to hear a little bit about, how you, the California kid, hooked up with kids from Illinois in this band called X. How did you guys form that band?
Let's see. I was going to try to think of something witty to say, like we met halfway. What's the halfway point between Chicago or Illinois and California?
It would be like somewhere in Utah, probably, or
probably Utah. Yeah, we were wandering around Utah in the mountains. Billy had been out here for a while, and John and Exene came in, I think, in 1976 or so, from Baltimore, and then John and then Exene came from Florida. So yeah, I guess they were. See, it was interesting. They were in the same scene. This punk scene, in L.A. and I didn't really know them. It was a relatively small scene. A couple hundred regular people. People come and go. I'm sure there are more than that. Probably 500,000. People come and go. But it was a relatively small scene, and a lot of people went from say, where's your band playing tomorrow, and they would follow you, and So I was playing in a band called The Eyes at the time, and we were playing the Mask, which was the underground, illegal club that Brendan Mullen ran underneath the Pussycat Theater, and with one exit and one entrance, in the back alley. And I was playing a gig with the Eyes, and I was with Joe Ramirez and Charlotte Caffey, who later went on to play with the Go-Go's. And John Doe, X was looking for a drummer because their drummer had left town. He had said, "I'm quitting the band." They said, "You're fired." He went back to Boston, and John. Okay, I'll get the story out. I'll spit it out. This is how it happened. Billy Zoom said, "We need a drummer who plays a big snare drum," because he didn't like cymbals so much. He liked, like toms and a snare drum, like a big backbeat. And at the time, I was playing the marching drum that I bought to play with the Buddhist, marching band. So it was a Ludwig Classic, 12 by 15. So it was really deep, 12 inches deep, and bigger drum. And John Doe heard the Eyes and said, I think he called Billy and said, I think I found the drummer. This guy plays a marching snare drum. And he came up to me and said, "Hey, I really like your playing. Hey, you want to, try out for my band and play in the band?" I go, "Oh, sure." And, it wasn't that I was necessarily looking for another band, but tell me if you've had this experience. Don't drummers play with multiple bands because maybe they're bored? They're hyperactive, and they go, "Why not? It's, easy enough."
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But there's a plethora of guitar players all the time. You know what I mean? I don't care what scene you're in. You can almost throw a rock and hit a guitar player, and drummers and bass players and good singers are kind of the rarity. So yeah, we get a lot of work, which is good.
Yeah. Yeah. So I played with them, and I found them interesting. Whereas I found that at that time it was a funny thing going on where bands would go, and people in the scene. It was kind of a one of my friends said it's a pissing contest. Like, who's the most punk? And people were trying to, people came into the scene originally were just, there are all sorts of musicians going, wow, there's, there was nowhere to play. Now there's a little scene and we can play our music. It's as simple as that, but people were going, well, I'm more punk, and who's more punk? And it was like oh God, and what I liked about X is they were actually different. They were really stubborn. They were doing whatever they wanted. They had some songs that sounded more like the Ramones, and they had some songs that sounded like Benny King, or they were like Adult Books. They weren't afraid to do different styles and grooves. And for me, I had a lot of influences. It was ecstasy. It was like, wow, I can actually play these different beats, and I can maybe occasionally put in a faux Latin beat, kind of a Latin-y thing, and I can do these. I can try to come up with interesting things like Nausea, which is just like Tom's, head banging thing, and boom, 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 really jungly, and so there were all these different. For me, it was all these different beats that could work with these songs, and so I would have kept playing with both bands, but X gave me an ultimatum. They said, you have to either join our band or not, So it's like, okay, twisted my arm. And so, so we started playing gigs, and it took us a while, which is, it was a good thing that record companies weren't signing. I don't know if they would have signed us at the time anyway, but the great thing about that scene is that it was kind of pretty much underground for a while. We got some attention from the LA Times and stuff, but people outside of the city didn't know much about us. We went to New York. That was the best thing we did. In '78, we had a single out, Adult Books, and we're desperate, and we just drove to New York and then played some gigs. So we kind of, that was the happening place, and people came out to see us, Debbie Harry, but people came out and they go, oh, here's this band from LA, and I think that kind of stuff. I'd recommend that every band, if you're a young band, try to travel, even though it's a pain. And you break down on the road and you lose money and you don't have a place to sleep. But it's the best way to promote a band.
Yeah, I mean, that's the story of all bands is when you do that first tour. But I mean, I think it's fair of me to say, and I correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys were kind of the flag bearer for the punk scene on the West Coast at that time. I mean, a lot of the, American punk music at that time was coming out of New York, the East Coast.
Yeah.
And you guys were kind of the, leading the way on the West Coast. And
well, the weird thing is, go ahead. I'll let you. I'm sorry.
Well, I think the first record, which you guys called Los Angeles, and I want to make sure I mention this. It was produced, if I'm correct, if I remember correctly, wasn't it produced by Ray Manzarek from The Doors?
It definitely was, and the first 4 records were Los Angeles, Wild Gift, Under the Big Black Sun, and More Fun in New World. They were all produced by him. I mean, that was an amazing thing. Yeah, that was, we met him in 1979. We'd been playing around a lot. We would tour up, just as much as we could. We didn't go back to New York again until probably, 1980. I can't remember exactly, but we were touring the West Coast and maybe Texas. Well, we got a gig opening for a band at the Whiskey, and Ray happened to be there. And he might have heard something about us on, in the paper that, we had people like Christine McKenna from the LA Times, and I don't know if Robert Hilburn at the time, but he eventually was writing a lot about us. But Ray came to the show, and we were playing, and we do a version of Soul Kitchen, which it doesn't sound anything like the Doors version. It's about, it could be 4 times faster than the original,
Yeah, sure.
And apparently what happened is he didn't recognize it, and he was there with his wife, Dorothy. And Dorothy kind of, nudged him and said, "Hey, listen to that." And Ray gave her a blank stare, like, what? He said, and she, kept going, "Listen." And, finally recognized it. But I think it was, I'm sure that added something to it, but he liked the poetry of the band. He liked the music. He came backstage right away and said, "Hey," he just said, "Hi, I want to produce you," and we said, I think we said, like, "Oh, well, yeah, we tried to get a record deal. It's impossible." And he goes, "I'll use my influence. I'll get you a record deal." And of course, he used his influence, but at the time, punk bands were verboten in the it had been ruined. It'd be like, "Oh, the Sex Pistols are assholes," and all these other bands. None of them get played on the radio. It's not going to work here. That was kind of the attitude, I think, until about 1991.
Oh, that's funny.
I mean, I'm kind of exaggerating, but there is a truth to that. And just as a note, I mean, they would play punk bands on certain radio stations. K-Rock would come and go. Rodney Bingenheimer always supported whatever bands he wanted. And college radio, those were the stations that would back up all these bands, no matter who it was. You can name Black Flag or any of the bands that toured as punk bands or anything, even some of the new wave bands. I mean, so like new wave could be played on the radio if it was, but anyway, the punk bands, forget it. And but anyway, so back to the story. I'm sorry, I digress. We couldn't. No one would go. Major labels they turned us down. But we got an offer from Slash, and they were basically a magazine. I think they'd put out a Plugs record. I don't think they had put out the Germs. Maybe they put out the Germs record. I'm not sure. I don't think they even put that out yet. And they said, "Here's $10,000 to do the record. That's your budget." And
so huge recording budget for 1980. I mean, just spare no expense, right?
Yeah, well, probably I don't know what the average was at the time. Probably 100,000. But
yeah.
But Ray said, I mean, because the studios are pretty expensive at the time. People don't, they forget that it was $500 a day or something, in that range, and maybe.
Yeah, not everybody had a studio in their garage back then. I mean,
not at all.
Yeah,
not at all.
You had to pay big dough to get in the studio.
Yeah. So two things happened. Ray said, "I won't charge you anything. I'll just take my percentage, points." And Billy Zoom had a friend who gave us a deal on his studio, Golden Sound, really good studio, but he didn't have any business right at that time. He said, you can spend more than 2 hours in there, whatever, $10,000 worth. He said, just finish it. So we spent about 5 days tracking, and then we did overdubs and mixing, and he gave us such a deal, and to our surprise, I mean, we didn't know what to expect. I mean, we started. I remember we played the Whiskey a Go-Go 3 nights. We sold out 1 and 2 and 3, and we started seeing fans from different places, that weren't from the scene, like people from the Valley where I'm from, like the, New Jersey, the Valley, the straight kids, like the stupid kids, which they aren't really. I'm from there, but in the scene in Hollywood, it's like, yeah, we're the cool ones, and you people from the Valley, yeah, you're in the suburbs, and
right. Well, I mean,
you're not bohemian like us.
Yeah, your scene was growing. I mean, and part of that was your record. Now, let me get my thoughts straight here, because I want to make sure I say this.
Okay.
You guys did your follow-up record, and you had to know something was happening, because in 81, I guess it was, you guys put out your second record, and Rolling Stone called it the record of the year, right?
I know. Absolutely amazing. Yeah, Wild Gift.
So, I mean, at that point, you had to know, okay, something's definitely happening now, right? I mean...
No, we definitely did, yeah. We definitely did, and it was snowballing, and as we toured, it was snowballing, and here's when I knew something was happening, we were touring for Wild Gift. If I have my chronology right, we did that. We did Los Angeles in 1980. We might have started recording the end of '79, but 1980, and then the follow-up, 1981, and that year we got booked in L.A. at the Greek Theater. Now, if you're not from L.A., the Greek Theater is it's a famous place that people play, and it holds about 5,000 people. Now, I think they said we were the first unsigned band to play there. So it's kind of like you hear nowadays, used to hear about, a YouTube star. They've never played live, but suddenly, 10,000 people want to see them,
right,
or something like that. And but so it was kind of unprecedented. In fact, I thought it was funny. We played the show, and I think Top Jimmy opened for us. I forget, I don't know if it was I think it was the Blasters and Top Jimmy, and Ray Manzarek played with us. But we get there, and the hospitality woman says, "Is this all you want?" We sent him a list, 2 cases of Budweiser, bologna sandwiches. It wasn't bologna, but it was something, something like you would expect at a little club,
yeah,
like just give us some peanuts. And they said, that's all you want? And I think, I forget if we revised it. They said, well, we served dinner for you. They had a whole, a service. They would, I played there many times since, and there's, you go into the dressing room. What do you've got 3 types of vodka, and you've got 4 bottles of wine, and this and that, and hors d'oeuvres, and you get the dinner, and then pizzas after. It's a whole thing. And we were like, well, yeah, some Budweisers and peanuts, but so I knew that something was happening, because I don't think we sold it out, but it was pretty damn close, and we were signed soon after that. We started getting inquiries from Elektra Records. We ended up signing with them, and Arista, and all these different labels were interested, because here's this band that no one would sign, and they're playing this big show. So and really the only reason we would have stayed with Slash, but they had no distribution. I mean, they had independent distribution. They weren't part of Warner's at the time, and in a way, it kind of helped them because they had a buyout. Like, we had to pay them, $50,000 to get out of the contract, and it allowed them to do other things, sign Fear and maybe Los Lobos, and that kind of stuff. So in a way, it helped them. But yeah, in fact, I remember we were trying to do a video. We said, can we have a few $1,000s to do a video? That videos are happening, and they didn't have the budget, and so that's what happened with that. So let's see. Next question.
Well, I mean, I just find all this so amazingly interesting, because I've just heard so many people, who was your big influence? X. I mean, it's in that genre of music, it's almost ubiquitous that everybody cites you guys as a huge influence. And, at that time, the early 80s, you signed, to Elektra Records. This is the label of, Motley Crue. I mean, the LA scene was starting to change a little bit in the early 80s. It started getting more of the, rock and roll, I guess what people would, I hate the term, but the hair bands, that the heavy metal stuff started happening.
Yeah.
But you guys...
we were in the studio at the same time when we did Under the Big Black Sun in 1982 with Motley Crue at that Cherokee Sound. Now, that was a mix of cultures.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure it was, but I think the scene in LA was starting to change at that time. But you guys were making just tons of noise. I mean, just tons of accolades over the years. And you mentioned a couple of other bands in there, the Blasters, and Dave Alvin, of course, great guy. Los Lobos, you've played with all of these people.
Yeah, and we still do. It's amazing. We're doing some shows with Los Lobos, this later in the year, and we play with the Blasters whenever we can. And of course, I play with Dave Alvin with the Flesh Eaters. We just recorded a record, and we're all, and Steve Berlin, who played saxophone, he's in that band too, with both originally with the Blasters. Now he's been with Los Lobos for 30 some years. So it's all part of that scene, and it's amazing, we play. I mean, as I think about it, a lot of these bands opened for us, and they became really giant, like, Jane's Addiction. They opened for us a few times, and the Chili Peppers opened for us all the time, way back when Cliff Martinez was the drummer, and the Go-Go's, and it's blowing my mind. But the one thing I want. Ask me then.
Go ahead, because I mean, a lot of people may not know this, but you actually drummed with the Germs for some time as well. And our mutual friend Josh said, "Do not let him off the phone without hearing the story about him playing with the Germs. It's great." So
okay. Well, I can tell that. Yeah, and before I tell that, let me just point out. It's interesting how, when we were in the LA scene, we were part of the scene. People, knew who we all were. We were insiders, but a lot of people didn't necessarily like X. They weren't influencing the bands that were out at the time. In fact, I remember that, like, the premier band when I came on the scene were the Weirdos. They were one of the best bands. They were always great. They looked great. They were tight. And it was kind of in retrospect that we became, the heroes. I mean, I'm sure some people hate us for that, and other people love us, but it happened because what happened later. The Los Angeles and the records and touring, and then we became the iconic band. But you go back to 1978. When I started playing with X, and we were just one of a bunch of bands, like the Screamers were a big band,
right?
And then the Avengers. We used to go play in San Francisco, and the Avengers were a big band, and the Dead Kennedys, and then in L.A. the Controllers and the Skulls and Wall of Voodoo came a little bit later. I'm sure I'm forgetting. There's so many bands that were, the Deadbeats and Gaze X and the Mommy Men and the Bags, and they were all the happening bands at the time. I'm sure I'm forgetting, dozens of them, but in retrospect, because we had a successful career, if you just if someone said X was the iconic band, you would think that everyone tried to follow us, and we were like, in 1977 or 78, like wow. But it happened in retrospect, let's say it happened because of the work we had done over the years, just chipping away at it. But I'll tell the Germs story because the Germs, I recorded 2 songs with them. Chris Ashford was this guy who had he had the label called What Records, and I had done something with he recorded the Eyes, and he went into the studio, a 4-track studio. Listen, any big deals like put up 6 mics and or 8 mics, I don't know, but anyway, a little tiny like a garage, and we did something. We were on a single with a couple other bands. I think it might have been the Skulls and the Controllers, and so Chris said, "Hey, the Germs are in between drummers, and can you come in?" So I just did two songs. We did Forming, the second version. They had recorded it already, and the other one was Round and Round. And I always swear that Darby, I think it was Bobby Pinn at the time, thought that was a Bowie song because he had done it on his Pinups. Is that what it was called? Pinups record? I forget, but it's a Chuck Berry song, and I go, oh yeah, I know that, Chuck Berry, and I remember Darby said to me, he goes, he was always whiny sounding. He was a really smart guy, but he was always whiny sounding, and he would go, "Why are you playing punk rock? Why don't you?" He goes, "You can actually play. Why aren't you playing with one of those bands like Yes?" And I said, "Well, because I don't want to play, that music. I like this music, and so I did. That came out. But the story probably Josh is thinking about is the other one where we came out of a club in L.A. What was it called? The Starwood, and Darby says, "Hey, we're doing a gig, and later in the week, do you want to play drums?" And I go, "Yeah, I'll play drums." He goes, "Yeah, we're going to rehearse tomorrow in I think it was in Venice, California." So I go, "Okay, give me the address." And those are the days before you didn't have cell phones. I didn't have a car. I lived about 10 miles away in the valley, so I'd walk back to the valley or take a bus or ride my skateboard. And so it was like, 1 o'clock in the morning and rehearsals at 12 noon. So I go, "I'll see you there tomorrow at noon." And okay, this was in Hollywood. Venice is probably it's probably 12 miles, 15 miles away. I can't tell you exactly, but it's at the beach. It's a long way away. So I just go, okay, I'll just walk there and sleep on the beach. So I walked. It must have taken me 4 or 5 hours. I don't know how, and I was a good walker, but, I remember stopping at a donut shop and eating some donuts and coffee, and I slept on the beach like a bum. And then I woke up, and at the time I had this other drummer who played in the Bags, Joe Nannini. He had given me a haircut. He goes, "Hey, I'm going to give you this. I'm going to shave your head in the front like a lobotomy shave." So it's the front 6 or 7 inches are totally cut off at the front, and I look like a total freak. And I remember walking by Venice High School, and people were looking at me like, "Oh God, there's a mass murder." I think that's one reason I started becoming a little straighter looking. Like, I don't want to look like a total freak. I'll just kind of look like, wear my hair short and have jeans and a T-shirt. So I went to the rehearsal, and they go, "Oh, I didn't think you'd make it. We have Nicky Beat playing drums." He was the drummer for the Weirdos, and he played more of the local punk bands than any other drummer more. But anyway, so that was the story. They were like, I went through all that, and they didn't hire me. So
you literally walked all night long, slept on the beach, and got there, and they're like, "Oh, we didn't think you were showing up."
Yeah, because you couldn't call him. I didn't get to go home. I didn't have his number. I don't think either. So at that time, you just showed up. Yeah, and so luckily they had a friend, and he gave me a ride home. He said, "Oh, I'm going that way. I'll give So I got home, but yeah. So that was my Germs story, and the other. And there's another funny one. Well, I'm sorry, because Josh is probably thinking of this. This is my third one. Can I do three Germs stories?
Absolutely.
Well, okay. I live in the San Fernando Valley still, and it's a middle class neighborhood, and about 8 or 10 years ago, I'm going to think, graffitiing became a really big thing out here, and it's a thing that gangs have been doing forever, and and it became this thing like kids in junior high school would get marking pens and write all over the place, and I was feeling really grown up at the time. I was living out here. I started cleaning it off, and watching for, okay, who are these goddamn kids? Get off my lawn, kind of Clint Eastwood type of thing, not quite at that extreme, but it was kind of like, I want to clean up my neighborhood. So I take walks. I'm walking around. I'm near the drugstore and the shopping center, and there's some kids. Oh, I know. I'm riding my wife's bicycle. It's a woman's bike, and I'm wearing a helmet. I look really, really, like, who's this dorky guy?
So anti-punk rock, basically.
Anti-punk rock, but I happen to be wearing a Germs T-shirt because someone they reissued it, and we had a friend who he goes, "Oh, you got to have these, got to get the Weirdos." And, he gave me all these Avengers T-shirt, and I was like, "Okay, great, I love these bands." Like if sometimes you go to a younger kid and you go, "Oh, I like your Germs T-shirt," and they go, "Oh yeah, I don't know who they are."
Right.
So I thought it was cool. I got it at what's that store? But anyway, so I there are 4 kids, and I go, "Hey, what are you doing?" And they kind of slink away. They start walking past me, and I go, "Hey, you shouldn't graffiti like that." And so then okay, they're kind of like, I could tell they weren't, they didn't have guns or anything. They were just like, local kids who probably in a band or something. And then I start riding away. I go, okay, I've done my job. And they say something snarky to me. So I turn around, I go, "What? What did you say?" And they go, "Blah, blah, blah, blah." And then they go, "You've got a Germs T-shirt on." And they go, "Oh," and they were speechless.
Yeah.
and I go, "Yeah, I played in the Germs. I'm one of maybe six drummers, who I said, I'm not going to tell you who I am, but you can go on the internet and look it up, and you can figure out who I am. You can come to my house and graffiti it if you want." And I took off.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh.
Yeah, it was one of those funny moments. It's fun to be an adult because you can mess with people and you don't care. You can tell them you don't have to. You're not worried about being cool, but you can kind of blow their minds. So
yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, oh my God, it's the guy that played drums in the Germs yelling at me. That's
yeah. That's perfect. That's what they would do. That's what the real punk rockers would do.
Right.
I'm more punk than you.
Those kids went home and got on Google and their brains melted. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, they went, "This guy, he's the one who lives in the valley, so it must be the guy who just played on 2 songs." It wasn't Don Bowles. I'm sure it wasn't Don Bowles. Don Bowles has really long hair. It wasn't Nicky Beat. So yeah.
Oh, that's a good story, DJ. That's a good one.
I forgot that was the one. I'm sure that's the one that Josh.
Well,
you can cut out the other ones, and
Well, he just told me, he said, do not let him off the phone without talking about it. DJ, let's talk a little bit about what you're doing these days. I know that you're recording for folks, and of course, you've got your Bonebrake syncopators group that you're doing. Tell us a little bit about what's going on, besides X. I mean, obviously you guys are still out there on the road touring, but tell us what you're up to these days is what I'm trying to say.
All right. And we are going on the road in July. We're going to do some shows with the Psychedelic Furs.
Oh, cool.
Going up the West Coast. And then I think we're going to be late August, early September, we're playing, is it called the Muddy Roots Festival? Is that in?
Yeah.
Muddy? Yeah, we're doing a week, and I think we're going to be in New Orleans too, and let's see where else. I think going to be in Alabama, and I don't know. We're going to be touring about a week. But anyway, so look for that. But other bands, I'm always doing stuff, and I always forget what I'm doing, because it changes so often, But I'll try to remember what I'm doing. We just recorded the second Flesh Eaters record with the personnel from A Minute to Pray, A Second to Die. That came out in 1981 on Slash. It became kind of a cult record, and we do shows every so often. And we did some shows in January, and we decided to do a record. And it's Christy is a singer, John Doe plays bass, Dave Alvin plays guitar, Steve Berlin plays sax, and Bill Bateman, the Blasters, plays drums. And so that's going to come out, I think, next February. I think that's on Yep Rock. So we just did that. That was a week of my life, and then some mixing. You mentioned the Bonebrake Syncopators. I'm a vibe player, and I was, I'm not doing that band anymore, but probably, I think that started in 2000. It was kind of a 30s swing, but band with T.K. Smith, who was with Big Sandy, and Jeremy Wakefield on lap steel, Wally Hersom on bass. He played with Big Sandy too, and Dave Stuckey. And then later, Jonathan Stout took over for T.K. Smith. And we were just like kind of a country swing sound, because Jeremy Wakefield, was a lap steel player, really great player. So I did that for a number of years. We played some shows last year, and I think that's going to be it, because T.K. Smith moved to the desert, and now he's building guitars. Jeremy Wakefield moved to Portland. And then I had another band called Orchestra Superstring, which was like a Cal Jader type band, and we played from, I don't know what year it was, 1997 until probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and had a couple records out on Dionysus, and let's see, and with great players, it's so great to play vibes, because you get to play with great drummers, and like Orchestra Superstring is, Latin percussion. So, I mean, I don't know if anyone will know these names, but, Danny Frankel played bongos, and Deborah Dobkin played congas, and Don Heffington played congas, and Victor Bassetti played percussion, and, he played with Lobos for a number of years, and Mike Bolger and Woody Jackson, all great players. So those are the bands I'm not playing with anymore. I play with Dead Rock West. We just put out a record called More Love. It was produced by John Doe. Dave Way was the engineer, and I've done a couple of records. One was almost nominated for Grammy. It was like in the second tier, almost, like it was almost there. It was called It's Everly Time. It was an Everly Brothers tribute, which was really good, really good. I don't know, it came out 3 or 4 years ago, but it was probably recorded 8 years ago. Let's see, what other... so I play with them constantly. I'm playing sometimes with the Devil's Brigade. This will go on and on. I'll stop in about 2 minutes. But Devil's Brigade is Matt Freeman from Rancid, the bass player. It's his solo project. I did a record with him. God, it must have been 8 years ago or something. But we play every so often. We're going to try to play, pretty soon. But that's Matt Freeman, and then usually Tim Armstrong, the singer, will, he recorded with us, and he might join us, and then Rob Malucky is the guitar player. But okay, then we decided. I had a band with Exene called Antichrist. It was in the mid-'90s, and that was with Matt Freeman, myself, and Exene. And we said, why don't we back up Exene and play as Antichrist? With Matt Freeman and Rob Malucky and myself. And I think we're going to do that. We've been doing rehearsals, so I think we're going to play some LA shows, because that record was kind of lost. No one knew it was there. It just it came out, and it was a really good record. Like really kind of straight ahead punk rock. Exene was playing guitar on the record, and you're going, what? I didn't know she could play that well. So yeah, that's we're going to do that. And then I'm working on a recording project with my friend John Mormon, who he lives in San Francisco, and he's playing with Matthew Sweet, guitar player, as a guitar player, and we've been working on this solo record for about 3 years, and we've got Victor Krummenacher from Camper Van Beethoven playing bass, and Willie Aaron on keyboards, and it's going to come out. And then I play with another band called The World Takes out of Philadelphia. We put out some records, but we opened for the Meat Puppets for a couple weeks. Got Stephen Maglio, and really great songwriter, and let's see, what other bands? Gosh, I had a band. I'm all over the place. Yeah,
busy guy, man. Golly, busy guy.
I mean, it's funny. I've been not as busy the last few months because I took time off. But I get bored, and people say, "You want to play?" With, "Oh, sure." And I had like, yeah. I probably I could talk for about 10 hours, and you go, "Okay, what's the band?" I'll start with the letter A, and then I'm at the letter C now.
Well, but I mean, it's good. It's good that you're staying busy. And I looked at your website, doing a little bit of research, before we jumped on the phone. The list of folks that you've played with is super impressive. And I know that you are also, if somebody's looking to have drum tracks done, you have a full service, kind of studio set up. If you're happy to put drum tracks on somebody's song, right?
Yeah, I do. And we just did a track last week, and it kind of comes and goes. Sometimes, we get a lot of action, sometimes not. I did a whole record with this guy, Dan Sartain, and I did this record with Super Fizzy. But, we do like a track at a time or a couple tracks. And, yeah, you could look under my website, djbonebrake.com, and there's a little information about that. And you can also see what I do. I wanted to do it home like most people do. They have a home setup, and I was just so slow. I bought the basic Pro Tools and some mics, and I didn't get a very good sound, and I didn't like editing, and I hate computers. So what I did, I called up my friend Travis Dickerson, who I'd been recording with a lot, over the years, and I said, hey, you've got a nice drum kit at the studio. It's a real studio with a 48-track board or something, with all this gear, great space, wonderful preamps, and just like a real studio, and the drum set's always set up. So I said, why don't we do it together, and we'll split it, and we can, he can do all the technical stuff, and it's really easy for me. I just listen to the song and I play to it until I get it right, and and it's always been, we charge $325 a song, and and I think for some people that's expensive. They go, well, I can get my buddy to do it for $100. He'll, and in some ways it's really cheap, and so, but we each split about $150, We do a 4-hour session. It might take us an hour. It might take us 4 hours. But we get it right. And the drum set always sounds good. And everyone who's worked with us has really liked it. So, and Travis will mix the thing just right for you, and do all the technical stuff. And so yeah, you can either look under djbonebrake.com or I forget what, Travis Dickerson Studios. I think it's, oh gosh, I don't know, TDS, or I forget. I forget how he does it. But if you look under Travis Dickerson Studios, you can get information and pictures of the studio and all his equipment.
Cool.
But so yeah, I'm doing that, and let's see, what else can I tell you? Oh yeah, and the resume, yeah. Some of the stuff there are people I actually played with a lot, and other people I just happen to be rubbing shoulders with,
Oh, it's okay. It all counts.
But because I was thinking, I did this thing, the Harry Smith project. It was a Hal Wilner thing. God, it must have been 10 or 15 years ago now, and all these people were on it, and I was in the backup band. I was second drummer. Stephen Hodges was a great drummer. Was the first drummer, but they had Larry Taylor on bass and Ralph Carney on sax and Smokey Hormel, who I'd played with before. He played with Beck, but I played with John Doe, with him in John Doe, and Bill Frisell. And I was in that band. I brought a marimba and drums, and it was like, but all the list is, I was putting my resume together, and my wife goes, "Why don't you put Philip Glass on?" I go, "Well, I only played a little marimba behind him when he came on stage. Really timidly. I don't know. I think she put him on, so that's stretching it. But Rufus Wainwright, he was on that show. I actually played. I was in his band right when his album was coming out. He was playing local gigs, and I flew to Montreal, played a gig with him in his hometown, because I was replacing Joe Berardi, who's the drummer. And we were just playing local gigs. So, so the other one is John Lee Hooker. And I didn't actually play at the time. I played with on a tribute. It was a Doors sponsored tribute record, and I can't remember the name of the record now. It came out about in 2000 or something, and we were doing Roadhouse Blues, and Ray Manzarek was playing in it, and Flea was playing bass, and Robbie Krieger. How's that for, for all-star? And of course, they were really relaxed about it. It was at Ocean Way Studios, one of the biggest studios here, and we came in there, and Ray Manzarek and Flea, they're going, "Hey, let's watch the Lakers." And so we went into the back room, into the whatever it's called. And we're watching the Lakers and eating sushi, and then for a while, and they're getting into it, and they're like, "Why don't we play the track?" So we go in. It's a pretty easy song. I used to play it all the time with Top Jimmy, and we played a couple takes, and there it was. But their idea was to have John Lee Hooker sing it, and they brought it up north, and he was almost, he died soon after that. And they couldn't get him to sing all the words. He was mumbling some of the stuff. So they ended up mixing his voice, going back and forth between his voice and the original takes of Jim Morrison.
Oh, wow.
So I'm backing up Jim Morrison and John Lee Hooker. And to make it even better, I'm going on and on, I'm sorry. But to make it even better, some fan made a video of they showed classic Doors footage, and it was a track of me playing drums. So it's I was playing Hal Blaine to John Densmore, and I felt funny about that. I know it's me, but that doesn't,
Oh my God!
That's just not.
I mean, I can only imagine. In my wildest dreams, I couldn't imagine that happening to me. And I know that you probably feel the same way. What planet am I on right now? Right? I mean,
I know it's so crazy when you're in a room with people like that. And the other thing that got me, this was the most fantastic thing, is we played the track, and then Ray was he was playing producer, trying to get Robbie Krieger to play another guitar solo. And I'm sure the one he did originally was fine. And Robbie plays this amazing solo, and I'm sitting just quietly in the back, just like I'm afraid to say anything. There's nothing I can say. And then Ray goes, and they're using tape, So Ray goes, "Yeah, that was good. You can do a better one." And he, he's erasing it. It's not like Pro Tools where you do 50 versions and you can go back and
Right.
No, it's like he's going over that track. I'm going, "Oh no, Ray, you don't know what you're doing." And then he did another track, and I forget if he did one or two. Well, it wasn't very many. And then I realized, Ray knows what Robbie can do.
Yeah.
He knows what and it was much better. It was, but for me not knowing, like, no, it was perfect before. No, you can't. No one can play better than that.
God,
things like that. That was one of the great moments. That made me understand how talented the Doors were.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. That's a great story. Well, DJ, I want to be respectful of your time, and one of our traditions on this show here on the Drum Shuffle, we always ask our guests for a good piece of advice. So, your career is just legendary. What advice can you offer to other drummers, other musicians? What have you learned over the last 40 years doing this stuff?
Well, I mean, I could be cynical, and
couldn't we all?
Well, it's it's a name drop. I was taking lessons from Murray Spivak, the snare teacher here. He would say, he wouldn't say anything unless you said, "Well, I'm having a hard time getting gigs." He would go, "Is there something you're good at besides drumming? Like, are you good at accounting? Or it's the worst business to be in the world. The only good music gig is with a symphony because you get all the benefits and it's a regular gig." So no, I just thought that was funny. But my actual advice, because the world is changing all the time with how you get music out there and whether you can make a living. I'm a little cynical about that because I see I see bands, they have young kids struggle, and I remember. I'm sorry, I'm going to go on too long again, but I was going to say, I remember I have a daughter who's 24, and I remember she was getting into some of the new bands, and one was Tame Impala before they had a thing on the radio on the it was for a commercial and all that, but at the time, you couldn't buy the one record. She said, "Go buy me the record at the record store," and you couldn't find it. And then suddenly they're playing a big place that holds 1,000 people. So I'll get to the point. But so I see that it can happen. You can play live music and you can make a living in a band. But my advice is kind of generic, like study hard, like be in shape, practice. If you're a drummer, whatever it takes to, the physical side of it, practice your stick control and on your drum set and, learn whatever you can. Of course, that side. But then the other step is like, show up on time, okay? Show up prepared. Know the music. Don't have an attitude, and, bathe. Like the simple things, like, it's so funny because you'll lose a gig, that guy he smells, or he's a really good drummer, but, he's kind of full of himself. He doesn't learn the music, I mean, it's just the really basic stuff, do the work, show up on time, have a good attitude, that kind of the stuff that your parents told you and you didn't believe, but you think it doesn't apply to rock and roll. Humans are humans. They don't want to deal with that stuff. They don't want you to, they don't want to deal with you arriving an hour and a half late because that takes away their time. And it's interesting. I've learned that I used to play in just community orchestras, but if there are 70, 60 people in the orchestra and one person's late and they come in, the conductor has to stop. So how many minutes, times 60, how many minutes have you wasted? Just by wasting 3 minutes, 180 minutes.
Right.
You've wasted. So Yeah, that stuff. How's that? Show up on time. Don't smell.
I think it's great. However, I'm having one of those surreal moments, DJ. I'm going to be honest with you, okay? I'm having a surreal moment that a legend of punk rock just said, do all the stuff your parents told you.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's one, it's a funny thing, but when you're younger and you go, well, I'm a punk rocker, and but you can do all that, and people make careers like, oh, they're always fucked up, and but what happens? They either die, either drug overdose, or they fall in front of a truck, or I mean, it's great for legendary, it's great for stories, but generally most people don't appreciate that. They try to get away, they kind of like, oh. I'm not going to hang out with this person. If you have any desire to live, Yeah. So it is what's the word? A paradox, to be like, to be in a punk band or be in a band like X, you have to be professional. It seems like an odd thing, but no one appreciates if the lead singer is 6 hours late showing up to the concert. I won't say any names. I won't mention any names, but no one likes that. And I'll tell you, and I'm going on for just forever. Your audience is going to fall asleep, but I'll tell you, the X is a really professional band. I think we've missed one show. We were there and we couldn't play because Billy was so sick. It was in Moscow, Idaho, and he had such a flu he couldn't get out of bed. And I think that's the only show we've missed that where we were there. There's a couple where we said, we're going to cancel that because it's for a reason. But we're professional. We show up, and that's what you have to do. Like we even did a Knitters thing where John Doe couldn't get on the flight, and there was another X one. John couldn't get to the show, and we had to cancel it in Ventura because there was an accident on the highway where he was coming to. And we had to reschedule. Okay, there were two, but we had a show where John Doe didn't show up in the Knitters, and we had to do it as a quartet. And Dave Allen's going, I think I can sing this song, and the next thing's going, okay, I can sing this without John, and. Anyway, I'll just keep talking. I haven't had any coffee, but I had some tea. I'm sorry.
DJ, this has been absolutely great, and it's been my honor having you on the show. And, it goes without saying, you're welcome on this program anytime your schedule allows. I hope you guys have a great run out there starting in July.
Thank you.
Come back and talk to us sometime. We would really appreciate it.
Okay, I would love to. I would love to do that. I'd like to thank my sponsors, Natal Drums and Zildjian Cymbals and Aquarian Drumheads.
Absolutely. We can't do any of this stuff without those guys, right? I mean,
okay,
that's
yes.
At the end of the day, we rely on those guys to help us keep going. So absolutely.
Yeah, the best. And so there you go, and thank Josh Tutchin again, and thank you, Jamie, for letting me ramble on. I vowed not to just keep going and have more of a give and take, but I get excited.
Well, this is great. I mean, hey, they listen to me every week, DJ. They want to hear from you, I promise. So this was fantastic. So we'll talk to you real soon again. Great run out there, and thanks so much for your time, DJ.
Okay, take care, Jamie.
All right, we'll see you now.
All right.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for episode 25. Thanks so much for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. We can't do any of this without every single one of you. Go ahead, as always, hit that subscribe button. Leave us a rating or review. It helps us tremendously as we continue to grow. We really do appreciate it. You're not going to want to miss any of the episodes we have coming up. Next week, I'm going to be joined by master educator Rob Ryan out of Canada. Rob is a phenomenal drummer. Just the technical proficiency that he shows is unparalleled, quite honestly. And again, master educator up in Canada, Rob Ryan, next week. So thanks so much for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. So until next time, may your head stay strong and your sticks never break. Cheers.